My name is Tina Rezash Rogel, and I would like to welcome you to the third annual Breaking the Cycle Breakfast to benefit Artemis Center. We are committed to getting you in and out in an hour today, and so we appreciate you spending the next hour with us. Because in the next hour, 400 men, women, and children will be abused in their home at the hand of someone they should be able to love and trust. Because every 9 seconds in America, someone is abused and hurt and wounded for a lifetime by domestic violence. It will happen again and again and again. So we appreciate you being here with us this morning. We all join together because together we can make a difference in this community. The Artemis Center has been making a difference in the fight against domestic violence for 30 years. This is their 30th anniversary. So today we want to celebrate. So today we do want to celebrate the thousands of lives that have been changed by the services that are always provided free by the Artemis Center. Their work was honored just this year with the 2015 Eclipse Integrity Award by the Better Business Bureau. Their work was honored because of the care they provided to their families to serve them with the very highest degree of integrity, compassion, and accountability. Leading this amazing team is our fearless and incredible leader, our Executive Director, Judy Sternad.
Good morning. I'm looking out at all of you that have come here today to support Artemis, and I cannot thank you enough for being here. This morning I would like to acknowledge our sponsors before we get started. Hauser Asphalt and Concrete, Cox Media Group, Haverstick Builders, Joseph Airport Toyota, the Kettering Health Network, and Sinclair College. I would also like to bring your attention to the artwork that you see on the placards on your tables. On one side we have statistics, on the other side we have child drawings. These drawings that come from the children that work with our therapist, Eric Wolf, and he will speak later about the work that he does. This morning I would like that we acknowledge and honor the 30 years that Artemis Center has served Dayton, Ohio, Montgomery County. 30 years ago, under the leadership of Nancy Grigsby, Artemis Center's founder, along with a few other volunteers, Artemis Center began its story here in this community. When I met with Nancy for the first time, I asked her how she created such a wonderful vision for Artemis. She stated that her vision for Artemis Center was to fill a need in the community, which was to provide community-based services, domestic violence services specifically here in Montgomery County. I asked her how she thought about this endeavor, and she said, "I was young and I didn't know that I couldn't do it." Nancy was the pioneer, along with a few others that stopped at nothing to provide the necessary services this community needed. We are grateful for her courage and her vision, and we are proud to say that we have kept her vision alive for 30 years, and we will continue to do so. Nancy, would you please stand so that we can recognize you? When Nancy made the decision to leave Artemis after 17 years of dedicated service to pursue working on domestic violence issues at the state level, Patty Schwartz-Tarver moved from an advocate position, which she held for 5 years, to become the new executive director, which she held for 12 years before she retired in 2014. Patty, would you please stand up so that we can recognize you? For 30 years, the community-based services that Artemis Center provides has served over 90,000 women and children. This organization has been fortunate to have many pillars holding up the organization over all these years. I call these pillars our board members. Today, I would ask that former board members stand as I call your name, and I ask if everyone could hold their applause until everyone has risen. Beth Edelman, Frida Brigner, Carl Brunn, Kathy Connolly, Karen Krim, Diane Marks, Lee Massoud, Holly McCutcheon, Hugh Quill, and Margene Robinson. Please give them a warm thank you. We thank you for your years of dedicated service to this organization. I would also like to thank our current board members for their time that they pour, literally pour, into the Artemis Center on every level. Again, I'm going to ask our new board members to rise when I call your name, and if we could hold the applause to the end, I would appreciate that. Board Chair, Joni Haverstick. Immediate Past Chair, Steve Wargo. Vice Chair, Jay Granfield. Secretary Treasurer, Matt Scarr. Development Chair, Dave Yonkin. Jennifer Andretti. Alan Conway. Scott Davies. Lillian Drakeford. Dr. Liz Hardy. Mary Irby Jones. Tina Rezash Rogel. The Reverend Dr. Crystal Walker. And Andrea Zavakos. Would you please give them a round of applause? For all of our board members, past and present, we'd like to thank you for holding Artemis in your hands and in your hearts. We could not move the mission forward without you, and together, along with former and current staff members, we are leading the community and its commitment to end domestic violence. At this time, I would like to invite our clinical program director, Jane Kiefer, to come to the podium to talk about her story and the story of our advocates.
Good morning. For the past 19 years, I have been so fortunate to say that I work at Artemis. Artemis Center is an organization that sincerely saves lives. We are a dedicated staff who is passionate about helping victims of domestic violence. We work tirelessly to making sure clients' needs are being met, not only by us, but by the community at large. We have competent, compassionate, and committed staff providing support, encouragement, crisis intervention, and offering referrals in a non-judgmental tone. Our staff is trained early on. Clients are the experts in their situations. We are there to provide support and safety. Our staff delivers services during the client's worst of times, and we do it with kindness, respect, and dignity. Every time someone says to me, "I don't know how you do it," my answer has been and will always be, it is an honor and a privilege to work with our clients. Most of our clients share their deepest, scariest, ugliest moments of their lives with us. They trust us with vulnerable and raw life experience and ask us to help them. I am humbled and amazed at their willingness to share so openly with us. When I started almost 20 years ago, we were a staff of over 40. Currently, we have a full-time staff of about 17. But what astounds me is the continued level of empathy, support, and dedication by our staff. The hotline does not ring less, nor have the numbers of domestic violence assaults decreased. The staff remains committed in helping as many individuals as we can, and we continue to serve over 5,000 individuals each and every year. Empowerment is a cornerstone of Artemis Center. We believe everyone is allowed to make their own decisions, We believe in giving individuals a voice when they lost their voice to fear. We exemplify this while we're on hotline, sitting with them at court, sharing in support groups, during our therapy sessions with a non-offending parent and their children, meeting with them when they walk through our doors, and when we advocate on their behalf. In 2014, our advocates answered 3,183 crisis calls, met with 420 individuals who showed up at our door without an appointment, met with 306 people who did have an appointment. We accompanied 463 individuals to criminal court, 212 to civil court, provided over 400 services to children and their families, and we educated over 1,000 individuals in the community. Artemis Center is truly a unique organization providing exceptional and extraordinary services to clients, family, and community members. I'd like to share just a few notes from our clients we've received over the years. Dear advocates, thank you so much for all the numerous ways you have shown me love and support throughout my journey to become healthier. I am tremendously grateful for the safe and non-judgmental atmosphere you all provide. I thank God for you all at Artemis. With all my heart, I thank you. Dear staff, I am grateful for your dedication in assisting my journey towards health and healing. I benefit each week from your insight and encouragement during group. Thank you for what you do. And lastly, dear friends at Artemis Center, thank you so much for being there when I've needed you. It really means a lot to have your love and support. The little things you do really matter and make a difference. I'm amazed at how you handle so many difficult situations in such a positive manner. Just know you are greatly appreciated. It truly has been a gift to work at Artemis Center, to watch individuals take steps towards their safety and their independence, to work with a staff who, hands down, is one of the most dedicated group of people to work with. Artemis Center sincerely is a safety net for many, and without us, some individuals would experience a deeper sense of loss of relationship, loss of self-worth, loss of dignity, or worse, loss of life. So it is this time that I would like to ask current staff to stand and remain standing so we can appreciate and recognize all your hard work. And now, for all of those who used to work with us at one point and are still considered our family, I ask that you stand and be recognized for your support. When I asked a former colleague and friend if she would like to attend this morning, she said yes. And she also said, Artemis shaped who I am in such significant ways, and I am forever grateful. I too am forever grateful to both staff, both past and present staff, who have helped build such an incredible organization over the past 30 years. For your vision, your passion, and dedication, I sincerely thank you all.
If you haven't already started eating your breakfast, please start passing your food and enjoying your breakfast. Denise Contras is an advocate, professional speaker, and founder of From Hurting to Healing. With confidence and courage, she enlightens her audience to the traumatic effects of domestic violence. She is the author of the forthcoming book, From Hurting to Healing: 7 Truths of Domestic Violence. The book is a tool to empower survivors as they heal from the long-term effects of abuse. It provides proven strategies to overcome the lingering trauma and take action toward a joyful and fulfilling life. The book will be available on Amazon later this year, and today after the breakfast, you can pre-order a signed copy of that book for $20. Denise earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in journalism from The Ohio State University, where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa. She is a member of the Ohio Domestic Violence Network and was recently appointed to their Interfaith Task Force. Denise understands that abuse outlives its lifespan and that for survivors, it's not over when you leave. Please join me in welcoming Denise Contres.
It was the middle of the night, and I couldn't sleep. This wasn't unusual for me. I kept hearing his words over and over again. If you leave, I will kill you. I was frantic. I just wanted to get those words out of my head. My heart was racing, and I felt nauseous. I grabbed a book from the bookshelf, any book, to distract me. I remember blowing the dust off this particular book. Apparently, it hadn't been read for years, if ever. I opened the book to a random page and looked at the words, "You must leave." I slammed the book shut and opened it again to another random page. There I saw, "You must go." I closed the book to check the title and realized I was holding the Bible. Now, at that time in my life, I was not a very religious person, and I had never read the Bible. Yet, I felt the tiniest bit of comfort as I replaced the threats in my mind with the words, "You must leave, you must go." I repeated those words, and I drifted off to sleep. The next thing I remember, I was gasping for air. He had both hands around my neck, strangling me. I could feel his thumb shoved into my larynx. He repeated the death threats over and over again, but this time I heard the words, "You must go." Somehow I broke free, I don't remember how, and I ran downstairs. This time, he didn't chase me. I locked myself in the bathroom until he left for work. When he was gone, I grabbed a trash bag and filled it with some clothes. I don't even remember what I pulled out of my closet. I was terrified, and yet I knew I must leave. When I was finally in a safe place, I thought, oh, the battle is over. I had no idea the war had just begun. When you leave an abuser, the problems don't disappear. I struggled for years from the chronic effects of trauma. To the outside world, my problems seemed solved, but for me, the work of healing had not yet begun. I have some well-meaning but uninformed friends who said, "Now, Denise, put everything behind you, forget about what happened, and move on with your life. Forget about what happened when I'm having nightmares and flashbacks. Forget about what happened when I'm filled with anxiety and suffering from panic attacks. Forget about what happened and put everything behind me when still years later I'm sleeping with a light on at the edge of my bed ready to bolt." Like many victims, I suffered from verbal and emotional abuse. I was told repeatedly that everything was my fault. I provoked him, and I was responsible and to blame for his outbursts. When the cordless phone came hurling across the room and smashed me in the head, it was my fault. I was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was trapped by fear and terror. I started to second guess myself. I couldn't trust myself to make good decisions. I desperately needed help, but I was too afraid to ask. I didn't know anyone who would understand what I was going through. What if he was right? What if I really was crazy? What if I told someone and he found out? Not only was I brainwashed, but so were some of my closest friends. I did reach out to a few people and confided in them. I told them the truth about what happened, but they didn't believe me. Abusers are often charming and can manipulate public perception. They believed his side of the story. When I saw these former best friends at the grocery or my volunteer job, they looked right through me. To them, I was invisible. Nothing in my life made sense at the time. I thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't remember who I was before, and I definitely didn't know who I was now. Early in my career as a journalist, I was the youngest reporter at the State House to interview Richard Nixon. After leaving an abuser, I could barely put the words together to form a sentence. I struggled for years on my own to figure out what was wrong with me, but the symptoms did not go away. It wasn't until I sought counseling from a domestic violence agency that I was able to begin my journey from hurting to healing. I learned that the traumatic experiences and symptoms I was having were normal reactions to abnormal events. Instead of always wondering, what is wrong with me? Instead, I learned to ask, what happened to me and why did that happen? Using my strong background in journalism, I began interviewing survivors, conducting my own research, and exploring the very complex dynamics of domestic violence. Among the survivors that I interviewed, there were common themes, common barriers to healing. I'd like to share some of my personal stories when I can, but for safety reasons, I can't disclose all the details. Most victims feel helpless, hopeless, and terrified, like I did. Prolonged exposure to domestic violence causes serious psychological and physical trauma. One survivor told me that after she was brutally beaten by her husband, he took a photo of her bloody face while she lay on the floor. For the next 20 years, he never touched her again. He didn't have to. Whenever she didn't comply to his demands, all he had to do was reach in his pocket and show her the photo. I remember that survivor. It was a tough story. The most dangerous time for a woman is when she leaves the abuser. Within the first few weeks after leaving, women are 70 times more likely to be murdered. Death threats are common and often acted upon. Every single day in the United States, 3 women are killed by their current or former intimate partner. It's not just the victims who are at risk. The rate of serious injury and death escalates for children. Children are not mere witnesses to domestic violence. They are traumatized by the experience. Battering parents are 6 times more likely than non-battering parents to physically abuse their own children. Without intervention, boys grow up to become the next generation of abusers and bullies. Girls grow up to become the next generation of victims. They're also at great risk for suicide. When studying patterns of domestic violence, it becomes clear that anyone can be an abuser. How do you imagine an abuser? Would you recognize the face of one? The truth is, abusers come from all socioeconomic classes and cultures. Although 85% of victims are women, I interviewed several men who were severely verbally and physically attacked by their wives and girlfriends. Members of the LGBTQ community are also at risk for intimate partner violence. The vast majority of survivors I interviewed were married to charming professional men who are active in their churches and communities. What I learned is that affluent abusers are manipulators with charisma. They are not less likely to abuse than others, but they're much more likely to cover it up. One of the women I interviewed told me her story. She said in college she was popular, had fun, and very active in sorority life. After getting her MBA, she married a prominent businessman who is so well liked today that his associates refer to him as Mr. Amazing. No one in their upscale neighborhood thought this could be an abusive relationship. By the time she left 15 years later, she was crippled by PTSD and hardly recognized as that bright, fun girl all those years ago. Another barrier to healing is pressure from family and friends. Once again, my well-meaning but uninformed friends said, "Denise, all you have to do is forgive and forget." I tried to forgive the abuser, and it worked for about 3 hours. What I realized is the more I was forgetting and suppressing the memories, the more intense the trauma symptoms became. One of the survivors I interviewed guided me to a domestic violence professional specializing in trauma. What I learned is those negative emotions I was suffering from were not the cause of the problem. They were signs from my mind and body that I still needed to heal. After treatment, years of negative emotions, fear and anxiety faded away. For me, forgiveness is not forgetting about what happened. It's not denying what happened, and it's certainly not trusting anyone whose intent is to harm me. Forgiveness is a choice I make to release the pain from the past. It's a decision to let go of the people whose actions still controlled me. I remember during that time in my life, I wrote in my journal, when I chose to forgive, I set a prisoner free. Then I realized the prisoner was me. The more research I did, the more I realized that navigating life after abuse is challenging and overlooked. The path to healing is not straightforward, and it's not easy. My book focuses on strategies and coping skills to help survivors overcome the barriers and move from hurting to healing. Every 9 seconds in our country, as Tina said, a woman is battered. It's not because she's helpless. She's battered because she's resisting, she's fighting back, she's taking a stand against her victimization. When she hears those words in her voice or in her mind, "I must leave, I must go," she needs help. She can't do it alone. She needs a strong support network to guide her through the perils of leaving an abuser and all the barriers that lie ahead. She needs safety planning, support groups, and access to social services. Her children need food, school supplies, backpacks, and counseling. She needs a legal advocate to accompany her to court and a plan for life after abuse. She needs all these services that are free and available to her at Artemis Center. When someone you know shares a story of abuse with you, guide that person, strongly encourage that person to seek help from Artemis Center. When you speak up and speak out about domestic violence, you are impacting social change. Because domestic violence is not a women's issue. It's not a children's issue. It is a serious social issue that severely impacts all of us. When you partner with Artemis Center, you're providing safety, hope, and healing to thousands of survivors and their children right here in Montgomery County. When you support Artemis Center, you are saving lives and becoming part of a dynamic social change. When I think about my life and everything that happened, I realize I'm one of the lucky ones. I received support from a domestic violence agency like Artemis Center. And because of that, I have the courage to lead a life filled with passion and purpose. I have the chance to help others, and that is my wish for you. Thank you.
It takes a tremendous amount of courage for someone to stand up in front of all of you and tell their story. I think Denise did a marvelous job in sharing what her life has been like today. Denise, thank you so very much. At this time, I'd like to invite Faith I'm going to screw it up. Yes, Faith Caston Payerly. She's one of our victim advocates who's going to introduce our next speaker.
Best part of that is over. I didn't trip coming up the stairs. Thank you. Save your applause. As Judy said, my name is Faith, and I'm a victim advocate at Artemis, and I have the wonderful privilege and honor of introducing our next speaker. His name is Eric Wolf, and he is our child therapist at Artemis. He uses narrative therapy and innovative ways of thinking to work and to help the children who are victims of domestic violence. So, without further ado, here's Mr. Eric.
I'd like to just take a moment here, and I'd like you all on your table, underneath your pens, many of you already found them, the little ribbons, little purple ribbons. And I'd like you to put it on, or like I did, you can put it on the back of your cell phone. I just want to say it's a real privilege to be able to get up here and speak when so many people have come up here who are so committed to this cause. As the token male on the staff, I'm honored that I'm allowed to talk at all. And I mean that in a positive way. I have received an amazing education with this institution over the last 8 months. I came here thinking I knew something about domestic violence from books and from the few clients that I previously had who were survivors of domestic violence. And what I learned, the education that I have received from my clients and from the staff of Artemis has been mind-blowing. I have seen the worst and the best of what can be in humans. I am honored by the trust they give me, these children. They walk into my office and they all have something in common. You're thinking they've all been let down. But no, you see, they all love the person who let them down. They all care. And so far in my career, I have yet to meet an abuser who is female. I know they exist, so I will use the male and female terms this morning. They love their fathers. And they love their fathers even though their fathers have used them as a weapon of power against their mothers, even though their fathers have abandoned any semblance of the role, even though their fathers neglect to hug them or kiss them. Now, there are those who do that and are abusive of their exes or were abusive in the past and do, in fact, care and act tenderly towards their children. But there are also those who are the worst. There are those children who come in whose monsters walk in the daylight, whose demons do not come in dreams. And in some ways, those are the most terrifying. Because those children tell me stories of being able to look at their gun collection, of being told of how their mother will be killed. And the most terrifying of those fathers are the ones that they know the line. They know exactly how far they can go to be legal. And they learn from the system how far and what they can get away with. Because as much as these children who come to me believe that justice is on their side, as much as all of them believe that I will somehow adjudicate or serve them through the courts. The truth is that my job is to break the cycle, to save the future. It is not to represent them in court as their lawyer. It is not to get the court to see their mother's point of view. For the mother, she's got the classic symptoms of PTSD. And when you think about our cultural idea of what a liar looks like, a liar is somebody who is looking down, who's nervous, jumpy, can't get their story straight. That's PTSD. And so when they're sitting in the courtroom and that really smooth talking man is up there speaking about how she did this and she did that, and she's looking down and not speaking very well, who's the court going to believe? And so the children walk into my room and they expect me somehow to magically solve these problems, and I can't. But I can change the future that will be. I'm a narrative therapist, and I work with children ages 2 to 17. And they have some things in common. Many of the older ones especially, they believe in equality, they believe in justice, and they are disappointed in the parents. And when I talk to them about who they want to become, what sort of father, what sort of mother they're going to be, they have a common theme. They all say, a nice one. As a narrative therapist, I ask them to choose the story they want to live, and I ask them to externalize the story they don't want to have. And if you look at the little cards on your tables that are standing up with the facts and figures on them, you'll see some of the externalized stories that they have externalized. I believe there's an anger, and there's a sneaky poo on a couple tables, and there's a tornado of troubles. And in externalizing, I ask them to look and to see how that problem has destroyed their world and how they would like to reject it or move away from it. I had one boy, now again, this is a generalized story because I can't tell you specifics, but I had one boy who, he told me that anger was his world. It filled his life. And then in interviewing him, I realized, and he realized too at the same time, that he never got in trouble at school. I was thoroughly surprised, and in trying to be not the expert in the room, trying to discover his expertise and give him the power to make his own decisions in his life, I don't understand. Does anger, when you get to school, does he like stay in your backpack? Does he like stay home by the door and wait for you to come back? And the little boy answered, quick as a wink, he said, well, you know, when I get to school, there are so many other children to play with. And I'm sure the anger runs off and plays with them. These children who come into my office, they have made a choice. They have taken a step towards the world that will be. It is tempting to think, because the work is endless right now, that this is an impossible quest. But I don't think so. If you look at the long haul, the long picture, 150 years ago, the idea of this conversation happening, the idea of this gathering happening, would not be. Look how the world has changed. And I say to you, like I say to my children, think of the world to come. What story will you be? Now, I know there are many people here who have walked this path long before me, long before my simple 8 months, that people here who I will learn from. And if you have something to offer me, I would love to hear the stories. But I also know that the children who come into my room, the teens, they have set their feet on this path to change the world, to change their world and ours. And I thank you, because you too, in coming here, have set your feet upon this path to break the cycle, to change the world to be.
Wow. Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. These are the photos the pictures, the drawings that Eric referred to. And I'm going off script a little bit, Judy. I hope this is okay. Take these with you. When you leave today, grab one of these off a table as your constant reminder, because we're all going to go home, right? We're going to go back to work. We're going to go home. It's going to be easy to forget. Take this home so you don't forget. It is my distinct honor and privilege now to introduce two people who impact the Artemis Center every day. Steve Wargo is our immediate past president, and Joni Haverstick is our current chair. I invite them to come up.
Wow. Thank you so much for filling this room today for Artemis. I want to especially thank Denise for sharing her story and validating why we are here today. Mike Hauser and I are passionate about Artemis and its mission. Artemis saves lives. My life was turned upside down as well by domestic violence. My sister and niece are survivors of domestic violence. It is due to their life journeys that I stand before you now, asking you to make a tremendous difference in the lives of adults and children whose lives every day are torn apart by domestic violence. Artemis Center offers all community-based services at no cost to any adult or child client. It is your continued financial support that allows Artemis Center to provide services that provide adults and children the safety and guidance they desperately need. Please donate generously to Artemis Center. I ask those who are able, please to consider the $1,000 Leadership Society level. When you have completed filling out your envelope, please hand it to your table captains. Artemis and I thank you in advance for your generosity. With your financial help, Artemis Center can continue to break the cycle of domestic violence in our community. Thank you so much for being here today.
In more ways than one, my story is not much different than the stories Denise shared with us today. For me, it has taken decades to transition from hurting to healing. I continue to heal through the shared connections and experiences from others. Although my physical signs of abuse have faded away, the psychological scars will always remain a part of me. Many years ago, I could not have imagined that someday I would be the board chair of Artemis Center. My only thoughts back then were, how am I going to survive? How am I going to make it through another day? And when will this nightmare end? My only hope of survival was to rely on the support and guidance from Artemis. And I want to give a special thanks to Nancy Grigsby for helping me through that. Thank you, Nancy. I am fortunate. I survived, and today my life is so much better. I am asking you today to help others through their journey from hurting to healing. I am asking you to help Artemis in its mission to end domestic violence in our community. Thank you in advance for your generous contribution, and thank you so much for being here today.